Welcome to the COLTS SQUAD SHOW. I'm your host, Derek Schultz, and I just want to get this out of the way. Peyton Manning will never be yours, Denver.
He will never be yours. And you know what? On Sunday, the Colts are going to have to beat the Broncos again just to prove it. Not that last year was any indicator.
And I'm Zach Hicks, and you guys are all ready to move to Denver, but I can't get enough of this Colts Dolphins film, so that's really what I want to keep focusing on for the rest of my day.
And I'm Alan Pinkett, former player, and what I have to say is, was the Colts win for real or a fluke?
Colts Nation, rise up. It's the Colts Squad. Everything Indianapolis Colts every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Circle City, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to squad up. The Colts Squad Show starts now.
And we're ready to rock and roll once again on the COLTS SQUAD SHOW. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Colts Network. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is right now. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. I'm Derek Schultz, Indy sports talker and columnist for the IBJ. I'm joined by Notre Dame legend and the guy who played 6 NFL seasons with the Houston Oilers and Alan Pinkett. And you everydayers know Zach Hicks and Jake Arthur, that dynamic duo from Locked On Colts. Your first listen every day. Today on the Squad Show, we're still basking in the glow, just like Zach, man. I'm kind of like, hey, maybe the Colts should just have a week 2 bye and just bask in the glow a little bit more of that opening win over Miami. But we are going to be taking our first look at the Denver Broncos. We'll start with overreactions and underreactions. So that will go back towards the first game. Each of us is going to pick one from that win over the Dolphins. Basically something that we think that the Colts can carry forward, and maybe something, that was maybe a one-time thing. We're also going to talk about what the national folks are saying about the Colts after one game. Obviously, there was a lot of pessimism, not only locally, but also nationally about what the Colts were going to do this year. And I know that performance turned some heads. The kind of test that Denver presents, this was a playoff team last year. A lot of folks expect them to be a playoff team again this year. That defense is very loaded up. We're going to talk about all that coming up in the third segment. And are we now raising the Colts ceiling? Maybe this goes back to overreacting, but guys, it's the NFL. That's what we do. We overreact. Guys, let's kind of start right with that immediately right away. And I'll kick us off. I guess I am the quote unquote lead host, so I guess I can go ahead and take the liberty to do that. I did want to start actually with an underreaction, so something that maybe we're not fully appreciating. And this is going to, and we do this after one game, we only have one data point, right? It's just last week. And so we're going to use that data point to back up our preseason assertions, right? And say, see, I told you I was right. And then we'll also use that to back, if it doesn't back up something that we said, then we go ahead and say, it's just 1 week. Who cares? Like, let this simmer a little bit. But one thing that I'm convinced of, guys, this defense is going to be markedly improved. One of the last impressions that the Colts defense left us with, and this was a really terrible late Christmas gift, they got run off the field by a horrifically inept New York Giants team. Second worst offense in the league. They were horrible, and they scored 45 points, and they had trouble putting up 13 or 14. New scheme, upgraded talent, Leatu Latu taking the next step. Those are all things that I think are going to lead to this, that make me believe that they're going to shoot from the back to, at the very least, middle of the pack, maybe even challenge to be a top third type NFL defense. I mean, that's how high I am. Some people say, well, what are you talking about? The 12th defense in the league. Guys, they were 29th, 30th in a lot of categories last year. That's one that I fully believe is going to happen this year, thanks to Lou Anarumo and all the changes that they made defensively, Jake.
I agree. I think this defense is legitimately going to be better. I think coaching goes a long way, and it seems like every 2 or 3 days they do something to reassert that they are confident what they're doing, whether it's a new player they're bringing in or whatever. They just continue to make the effort to have the best defense possible. Now, it's not always going to come in the form of a player, like this rookie undrafted guy that they just brought in. We don't know him, but we know Derek Forrest. They keep bringing in guys with name recognition, guys they've worked with before and know. But I think this defense is going to be legitimately better. Now, I think they're third in the NFL right now. So I don't think they're going to be that high throughout the year. They're not going to average only 211 yards per game and have offenses in hell like they just did on Sunday. But overall, I think they're going to be much better. I think they're going to be competitive week to week. And I think they're actually going to stand a chance against the better quarterbacks of the league when they come up against them, because they're going to have to make those quarterbacks think. Before, those quarterbacks already came into the game with a pretty good idea of how they were going to attack it, and they were successful. Like, how many times did we see backup quarterbacks come in and look absolutely awesome against the old Colts defense? I just don't see that happening this year. So I do buy into that, Derek. And an underreaction I was going to have is I have not heard enough people question if there is going to be kind of an alpha pass rusher step up yet. And Zach, I want to hear more from you on this one, because this was kind of an abridged defensive performance because the defense just wasn't on the field in this game against the Dolphins. But Latu was on the field for 31 plays. I think it was like 17 pass rush reps. He did have the pick, which was awesome. I think he showed off better athleticism than a lot of people really considered, but really only one pressure. He had a quarterback hurry. And I think we were all hoping against a not great offensive line that we would see him get a sack, or we would see him influence the backfield a whole lot more than he did. And again, this might be overreacting on my part, but I am just a little surprised we haven't heard that brought up much yet. Now, I do think Latu had a pretty decent game against Denver last year, if I remember correctly, at least had some pressures. Now he's got a hamstring injury, so we'll see how that progresses through the week if he'll play. But for a defense that's going to be so reliant on him to step up and be that like top dog pass rusher, I had hoped to see a little bit more in that department on Sunday.
Yeah, and I completely understand your concern there. I will say, when I went back and looked at the film, the Colts' plan of attack in this game was mostly, we're not going to devote too many pass rushers to going after Tua, because we just want to get into those passing windows. Because no matter how many guys you bring, unless you're getting pressure within 2 seconds on Tua, so that's going to be 5, 6, 7 guys, that ball's coming out at 2.3, 2.4, at most 2.6 seconds. He is a point guard back there. He doesn't want to hold the ball no matter how much you have covered up. So what we saw in reverse was essentially Latu dropping into coverage for like 6 cover snaps in this game. We saw Kwity Paye dropping into coverage. I called it drop 8 coverage. It's a very big thing in college football to combat the air raid offense. You guys can actually check out my YouTube video I posted today where I broke down that drop 8 coverage that the Colts did. So to go with what you're saying here, Jake, I am certainly concerned, but it's more of like, I'm just watching to see what the pass rush looks like.
I'm not sounding the alarms yet. I'm definitely still confident in him, but I just thought we would have seen a little bit more so far.
Right. I want to see what happens when they pull the tether off these guys and let them really go after a guy like Bo Nix. So we'll see this week against a really good Broncos offensive line. But I want to go a little bit more micro with my underreaction. And this is a guy who I think a lot of people are excited about, and he had a great game, but I think we're kind of even underselling how great of a game it was. I really think Tyler Warren, man, is going to be something special this year.
All right.
And I know I'm taking Alan Pinkett's his thing here, but when you watch the film, like, everyone's talking about the pass production that he did in this game, which was great. You know, the Colts did everything that you need to do to get Tyler Warren involved. You had the double move up the sideline vertically, and then the other targets he got were zone beaters over the middle, beating the blitz, and just, you know, clearing zones and getting into space, and then letting him run after the catch. But the run blocking was so special in this game. It was on another planet how good it was. If you look at Pro Football Focus, they have him as the 5th best run blocker grade across all positions in the NFL through week 1. Number 1 tight end by far and away, only starting tight end to have an elite grade in run blocking. And honestly, I think they might have undersold it when I watched the film, because it was that good. I looked like I was watching Jack Doyle again, but with a little bit more juice. And then again, you bring that with the pass catching prowess, with the stuff we haven't seen yet, which is the Wildcat quarterback stuff, the more designed runs, more fullback looks. So I know, again, I'm taking from Allen here, but I think we're underselling how good Tyler Warren was in week 1. He's getting the praise from, you know, Pro Football Focus and stuff, but I mean, look, if I had an opportunity to do so in fantasy football right now, I'd go out and get him in every league. Because I'm partially convinced that this might be like the guy leading the team in targets and receptions this season. Just the way they used him, how just big he was involved in the offense in both the run and pass game. this is going to be a massive season for the rookie tight end. I don't know if it's going to hit Bowers levels from last year, but I think this might be like the second or third best tight end season that we've seen from a rookie when it's all said and done, as long as he stays healthy. That's how optimistic I am after this week 1 performance.
Well, Zach, the overreaction is the fact that Tyler Warren was the second tight end picked in the first round. I can't even remember the name of the first tight end taken, but sometimes these teams just overthink it. I mean, if you had watched Tyler Warren all year long, he was the heartbeat of that Penn State offense. You could tell, and I mean, he had mentioned it this week when interviewed. The fact that he has a feel for the game, he's got like a sixth sense. He understands how to advance the ball up the field. So that is the overreaction. But I'm going to take a different tack. I don't think you can overstate how bad of a beatdown the Colts put on the Miami Dolphins, because most games are decided between 3 and 7 points. And even if one team is scoring 30, the other team is scoring 30. So what is required as a player when you get a beat down like this is some perspective, okay? Because you're never as good as you think you are, or you're never as bad as you think you are. But when you apply perspective, you understand that when you execute the way you did on Sunday, you're going to put yourself in a position to come out victorious most of the time. If you look at all 3 levels of the game, offense, defense, special teams, maybe it was the fact that they were playing at home and they didn't have to deal with crowd noise, and we'll see what happens when they Colts finally do go on the road. But the level of execution that the Colts had, if they can play like that, I don't care who they're playing against, they're going to have success.
Yeah, you talk about perspective, Alan. My overreaction is exactly that. And this, I'm not seeing in a lot of circles, but I did get a couple of texts like, hey, are the Colts now contenders? We need to see a larger sample size of consistently good to very good play from Daniel Jones. I think we would all agree there. And the Colts are still at the mercy of the injury bug, right? That always seems to play a factor for this team for whatever reason. Look at their secondary depth chart, especially with Mooney Ward missing practice this week. It's going to be kind of a mash unit out there. And, I still think as good as they looked against Miami, you tune into games like Baltimore and Buffalo last week, and it just feels different what you're watching compared to a Colts-Texans game. And I'm not quite ready to say that yet. As encouraged as I am by that week 1 performance, I still need to see a lot more, Jake.
Yeah, I'd agree. That's why, obviously, this one is such a big barometer game. But even so, last year with what I feel was a much worse team with a worse quarterback situation, they were in control for that whole first half. So I think we just have to see how it looks. Are the positive things that they showed against the Dolphins, are they validated? Or are we just seeing random spurts of good things? You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Is the passing game going to crash down to earth, but they run for 200 yards? Are they going to show some consistency in certain areas that makes us believe they are truly growing and they're forming an identity, number one, because that's the thing they have not had on either side of the ball. Even special teams, you got a new kicker too. The team hasn't had an identity anywhere on the entire roster in a few years. So that would be good to see, maybe a run-based team where the quarterback can take what the defense has given you and create bigger plays off play action and things like that. I think that would be a good identity for this team, with mixing in some more exotic stuff out of shotgun and pistol and the RPO stuff that we know they like to use, obviously. So yeah, I would just like to see them continue to ride the highs, and that will make me confident that we're seeing them trending in the right direction.
Yeah, and to be real quick with my overreaction from week 1, I do agree with you, Derek, that this defense, I think, will finish as a top half unit by the end of the season. But I think we might be overreacting that there won't be some warts here early in the year. Watching that film, I think it was a really great game plan the Colts had out there, and they were ready for what the Dolphins wanted to do. but there were still some moments where you could see how there could be leaks in this thing, in the run game in particular, and then in pass coverage. There were still a few moments where the communication wasn't pristine. And I was thinking like, okay, a better team that's just more on top of it might take advantage of that. So I do completely agree with that we're understating that this defense can be a top like 15 unit by the end of the season. But I do think some people are going the other direction where it's like, Lou's fixed everything. It's perfect. We're going to be a top 10 defense, top 3 in the NFL right now. I do think that we might be overstating that a little bit. There's going to be some warts in these next couple weeks. We could see it as early as this week. But I do agree with the overall sentiment that by the end of the year, they're going to be looking pretty good. But I think there's going to be some more ebbs and flows early in the season than what week one might kind of make it seem like.
Well, when you win like that, believe me, the coaches aren't patting the guys on the back. They are putting an emphasis on the mistakes and some of those potential warts. They're looking at what could we have done better, because they want to try and achieve what's a perfect game, which is unachievable, but that's how you keep getting better. How can I improve? What is it we can do as a unit? What can I do as an individual? How do we improve? Don't tell me how good I was. Just tell me how I can get better. And I think that's where the focus is going to be for this next game.
Yeah, I mean, even a game that should have been 33 donut, it wasn't perfect, right, Alan? I mean, there were things to nitpick that were in there. And that was about as close as the Colts have come in a long time to getting that A++. You know what the folks and fans around here are saying about the Colts, but it looks like that week one performance grabbed the national talking heads' attention too. We're going to share what they had to say next when the Colts Squad Show returns. This portion of the show brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel lets me customize my betting experience how I see fit. Maybe I'm feeling some props and scanning a few that pique my interest before the game start. Or maybe I'm feeling like, I want to see how things play out here a little bit. And then I jump in for some live wagering once the ball has already been kicked. That's the beauty of FanDuel. I can make every game more exciting whenever I feel like it, and it's quick and easy with the app. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. And right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download that app right now, FanDuel.com, to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And we're back on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for joining us alongside Notre Dame legend Alan Pinkett and the dynamic duo from Locked On Colts, Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks. I'm Derek Schultz. So what the national folks are saying, guys, Colts were, look, you might be a power rankings guy. I'm not a power rankings guy, okay? I used to, when I was 17 years old, I used to lose a lot of sleep over power rankings and going online and, in 2002 or whatever and looking up ESPN power rankings and God, what are they saying about this team? But I know people follow them, and I know it's good just to kind of get a perspective on what it's impossible for everybody to follow all 32 NFL teams as closely as you follow your own team, right? So I like to kind of sprinkle in, okay, what are other people saying about the Colts? I just wanted to run through a couple of these, and then we'll kind of react as a group. The Athletic put the Colts at 16th. So up to most of these power rankings were rises, like 6, 7, 8 spots, even in some cases. From the Athletic, quote, nothing to nitpick in this one. We've kind of talked about that, except for the obvious question, was this for real or are the Dolphins just that bad? I think we're going to be kind of wondering the same thing coming up here on Sunday. And Jake, you kind of mentioned it, validation. Are we going to see some more things that further validate what we saw from the Colts in the opener against the Dolphins?
Yeah, absolutely. And 16 is maybe like a little rich, but I do think closer to like the 20 range. Because, nice personal attack on me earlier, by the way. I wrote about the ESPN power rankings. I did a segment on it today. But no, so ESPN boosted them up from 26th last week to 23rd. And I was like, okay, I know this was a win against a crappy team, but 26 was probably too low to begin with. And so, yeah, I do think the only thing that gets you attention nationally is wins. That's it. Yep. I do think the Colts have to win. This is a statement game on Sunday because the Broncos they're not always in the news, but they're always relevant. Like, they have an enormous fan base. Like, they will always be a talking point when they're doing well. So you beat the Broncos, you start 2-0, and if Daniel Jones is playing well, that is a redemption story that people will eat up, and that will finally start to get the Colts a little more credit. Shane Steichen will be talked up as a genius because he's revitalizing Daniel Jones. Like the good takes will start coming in, but yeah, the Colts are very, very much irrelevant until they start winning. I have, like, part of my job for the last several years has been combing the internet nationally to see what people are saying about them, and it's when they're not winning, it's nothing at all almost, and if it is anything, it's usually not good. So yeah, they I think can make a big significant jump here if they beat the Broncos. It's not going to look like the Dolphins win, but if they beat the Broncos, people I think will start finally giving some kudos.
Yeah, and Alan, you obviously covered Notre Dame for a long time. Derek, you talk about college football a lot. The way that I kind of relate this is to those preseason college football rankings, where number 6 Alabama loses to number 2 LSU. And despite being 0-1, we still have Alabama as like the 8th ranked team in football after that first week or so. There, what we saw with Texas and Ohio State, right, where Texas dropped back like 1 spot. Notre Dame only fell back a couple spots after their week 1 loss, and it seems goofy, right? Like an 0-1 team is a top 10 team in football, but people are just more willing to hang on to their preconceived notions before the season. Even when there's just that one data point, they wait until there's multiple data points to say, okay, maybe we should change it up. But even then, we see sometimes in college football that a 6-6 team will be ranked ahead of an undefeated non-power 4 team. But yeah, it's kind of just the way it is. People need to hold on to those preconceived notions. They need to hold on to what they thought coming into the season. And it takes more than just one data point to change that perspective, especially when that one data point, despite how great of a win it was for the Colts just in terms of pure dominance, is against a team that many didn't expect to be in the playoffs. Like if this was a shellacking against, the Commanders or the Eagles or the Chiefs, one of those teams that was in the championship games last year, then this would be a different story. But because it's against the Dolphins, who had the off-season turmoil of trading away players and not trading away players, the questioning the physicality in joint practices, it kind of is everyone just spiraling and saying, oh, this is more of the Dolphins than the Colts. But I guess my only slight pushback here, and then Alan can jump in, I'm sure, on this, is, again, you don't beat someone up like this by fluke. In the NFL, the margin between the worst team and the best team in the NFL is really not that far. It's not that far. It feels that far sometimes. But in the NFL, these are professional players who have been the best players on their teams since little league to high school to college. These are guys who are the best of the best, and the margin for error is so small. That's why we see so many one-score games. So when you win by 25, which was the biggest point differential victory in week 1 across the NFL, I do think there's something not as fluky about that. And it wasn't like it was something where it piled on late. Like, they just steadily beat the crap out of them. So, yeah, I do think that some people are underreacting to the how the Colts won in week 1, even though I understand the tepid reactions to just one data point to start the season.
Well, remember what I always say, there are no bad teams. There's only teams with bad records. But I did pay attention to, some of the national pundits, and most of the sentiment was on Miami. What was wrong with Miami? Is Miami that bad? And as a player, when you see that, you internalize it and you say, we made them look that bad. So that's the upset part that you would have. It's like, you didn't watch the game, you didn't see the beat down we put on them, we made them look that bad. But I think a lot of that sentiment was based on the fact that there were low expectations from the Colts because of the quarterback situation. I guess what wasn't taken into consideration was the 8-9 record last year, which means you're getting close. And this is a better group of players. I think what wasn't taken into consideration was the fact that you upgraded on offense immensely with a tight end who's a player, So I would see some players being upset that the national media is talking more about what's wrong with the Dolphins instead of look how good the Colts are. But then by the same token, as a player, it's like, I don't mind being under the radar. It's okay if other teams think that game was a fluke and they just come in here and second guess us or not think we're as strong as we are and wait for us to thump them, then that's okay to be under the radar. So I think there's two ways you can look at it, and I can tell you that most players are like, go ahead and keep saying it was the Dolphins, and we will prove to you that it was us.
Two other interesting ones here, and this aligns more with what you said, Jake. 20th for both of these, The Ringer and Yahoo. The Ringer says, as long as Daniel Jones is protecting the ball and is healthy enough to scramble, I can see why Shane Steichen trusts him to run the show. I mean, when he plays like he did on Sunday, you can kind of see how that happens. I thought this comment was interesting from Yahoo. And they do mention, as you said, Alan, was it more of a reflection of the Dolphins being bad, yada, yada, yada. But the last sentence, don't forget the Colts were 8-9 last season with terrible quarterback play. That sticks out to me as well. That, no one really, the people that had the Colts as a bottom 5 team in the NFL weren't recognizing the fact that, hey, quarterback was really bad last year too, guys. Yes. And they actually weren't that terrible of a team largely.
Yes. So everyone's thing was the Colts have a really good roster, but but was the quarterback position. Daniel Jones just had one of the best games of his life. Give them some credit. Your but just reverse track on you. And again, there's an entire season left to play, but we have the one data point so far, and it was awesome. So it's like, okay, like the big question you have is starting to get answered at least a little bit. Like, pay attention.
Yeah, I never bought into the fact that the Colts were going to be this bottom 5 team. Look, we have seen the Colts be an awful team one time in the Chris Ballard era, or I guess twice. The first year he had all of Grigson's guys and all that, but one time since he really rebuilt this roster, and that was in 2022. And for that to happen, they had to fire their coach midseason, bring in an ESPN personality to coach the team, change quarterbacks 4 separate times, have Jonathan Taylor leave with injuries, half their offensive line shuffled throughout the season. They had their defense going down with injury. Like, they had to have so much turmoil to be the 4th worst team in football that year. And honestly, if they keep Frank Reich as the coach all year, they probably finish with the 10th or 11th worst record in football. They are just not a poorly built team. They have too much talent on this team to be a bottom 5 team in the league. Now, don't get me wrong, the quarterback play could fall off after week 1, and we could see some injuries really limit the ceiling of this team this year. But I just don't see them falling that far. They have too good at coaching, too good at top players on this team, and they simply just know what they're doing. They are not this mess of a team. And as Jake said, last year they were 8-9 with pretty bad quarterback play across the board. And then even 2 years ago, they were on the cusp of making the playoffs with Gardner Minshew, a career backup. He has mainly been a career backup in this league. They almost went to the playoffs with Jacoby Brissett back in the day, a career backup. This team has been well built enough to be a playoff hopeful for all of Chris Ballard's tenure. So unless you really thought Daniel Jones was going to be Nathan Peterman every single weekend, this team was not going to be a bottom 5 team this year. Honestly, I think that 16th ranking by The Athletic is pretty much around where I would expect, 16 to 20, 21 range. That's where they should have been prior to the season. And now it feels like people are just kind of catching up a little bit there.
Well, the other thing you have to think about in terms of national sentiment, favoring the Dolphins being bad, is how much they have built up the Broncos all off season. I kept hearing about how great this Broncos team is going to be, and the head coach and Bo Nix and second coming of Elway and everything. So the stage is actually set. Nice for the Colts, because it's another one of those nobody's expecting much out of them, because the darling from the national media are the Broncos, even though Bo Nix threw 2 interceptions last week. I think this defense is perfectly positioned to go in and make plays and create havoc. And as long as the offense executes like they did last week, it doesn't matter who they're playing.
Well, I already know how Alan feels about the Broncos. That segues nicely into our next segment where we're going to talk about the Broncos. The Colts offense did not face much resistance against Miami, but we're not so sure we could say the same thing about Denver. We'll talk about the test that the Broncos present on both sides of the ball for the Colts next when the squad show returns. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. How about that? Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Also, don't forget about their Trademaster perks. With perks like priority shipping and dedicated support, it makes the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use their promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. Again, supplyhouse.com, sign up for free, promo code SHCollege, the number 5, for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. And we're back on the Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for making us a part of your Wednesday night. Just a reminder, during the season, we will be with you every Wednesday night, right around this time at 9 o'clock. And we are your place for live game recaps. Win or lose, rain or shine, roof open or roof closed. We will be here for you talking
Usually
Colts football.
closed.
After every single, it was nice to see it open. The shadows drive me nuts watching on TV, but in stadium I kind of like it.
It's good.
Yeah, let's talk about the Broncos, guys. Obviously, this is a stiffer test. Certainly, from what we saw, the Dolphins. Even though I think the Dolphins are a more talented roster than what they showed in Week 1, a very good defense, perhaps the best secondary in the entire NFL, or one of the best. I'm still kind of meh on Bo Nix. I think he's fine, and they don't have the weapons that Miami has, but still, Zach, especially with the Colts cornerback room the way that it is, I don't think you can take anything for granted there. And then defensively, this is going to be one of the best units on the entire 17-game slate that the Colts face on paper.
Yeah, it's one of the best that you're going to face all year because it's one of the best defenses in football. They kind of have that difference maker at all three levels, especially if Greenlaw plays in this game, because they'll have Greenlaw at linebacker, they'll have Bonito and Zach Allen up front, and then Pat Surtain Jr. up in the back, who's just this outstanding corner, arguably the best in football. So yeah, this Denver Broncos defense is very, very good. Again, they have those weapons at all three levels, and they play with such a confidence and aggressiveness on that back end. Came away with 3 turnovers. Or no, sorry, that was the other way. They came away with a bunch of turnovers last year, a bunch of sacks last year. I know they didn't get after Cam Ward a ton in terms of getting the turnovers last week, but they got the sacks, 6 sacks against Ward in that Week 1 game against a Tennessee Titans team that revamped their offensive line. So yeah, this Broncos defense is very good. I think the key for the Colts, if you want to exchange punches and score on this defense, is avoid the negative play, avoid the penalties, avoid moving backwards. As long as they do what they did in Week 1 and continually move forward, I think you have a chance against anybody, even this Denver Broncos defense. So yes, on paper, that it is one of the best in football. Even though I always say that like defense is regressible from year to year, it doesn't look like this Denver Broncos defense is regressing anytime soon because of what we just saw in Week 1. But yeah, I think the key is just don't get in your own way. You know, this Broncos defense is going to come after you. They're going to be physical. They're going to be aggressive. Don't hurt yourself by taking bad penalties, by taking bad sacks and pushing back behind the sticks. As long as you can do what you did in Week 1, get to 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 4th and 1, you can always be in a positive situation and move forward. As Alan said last week, staying ahead of the sticks. It's the new terminology in football. That is what it is, staying on pace ahead of the sticks. That's going to be the motto for this Colts offense all year. And Week 1 was kind of the pure example of it, the best example you can possibly get, scoring on 100% of your possessions, only having 1 third down after past 8 yards. That's the perfect example. But going forward, as long as you can kind of keep that stuff like that, I think that they'll be able to compete in this game and exchange some punches.
I think so too. When I was watching the 2024 game back, I looked at it and I was like, the middle of the field, both running and passing, seems to be open. The Colts did some things that are probably a little more pro Anthony Richardson than pro Daniel Jones. They did a lot of like pistol shotgun misdirection RPO stuff that is just more tailored to Anthony Richardson. It worked pretty well. And Daniel Jones isn't a guy that goes over the middle as much as Anthony Richardson does either. But I still think there's things they can do. But I mean, to Zach's point, at the end of the day, it kind of does just come down to not shooting yourself in the foot, because they were in strong control of that game last year until 5 turnovers, the Jonathan Taylor fumble at the 1, AD Mitchell's pick 6 fumble thing to Nick Bonito. Again, they turned the ball over 5 times, and Denver made them pay for it pretty much every time. They scored or did something significant off of those mistakes because they're a good team, and that's what good teams do. The 61-yard punt return, like the Colts just allowed too many big things to happen by not executing and just not playing smart football. And I mean, they look like a smarter team on Sunday. Like as long as they just don't do those like boneheaded things, I'm not going to say they'll win, but it will be a much closer affair than last year was.
So, I talked about how the national media, they just look at the Broncos. That's the new darling of this year. But I think they're probably justified in thinking that way because of one name, Sean Payton. And Sean Payton, there's only a handful of coaches that really know how to put together an organization and run a football team efficiently to get positive results. And he is one of those guys. Anybody who can take the Saints and win a Super Bowl, he should be on Mount Rushmore.
The Aints. That's what it is. The Aints to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Oh, oops, I forgot who they played that particular.
I'm not ready to talk about it, Alan.
One thing I wanted to ask you, Alan, because your perspective of playing the Colts last year were in position to go up 20-7 in the third quarter of that game against the Broncos, and one just bad mistake by a great player led to that game spiraling out of control and turning into the blowout loss that it was. But for the Colts, when you're looking back at that game, do you kind of have that like revenge aspect of it where it's like, man, we had them? Like, does that kind of fire you up more as a player where it's like, we had them last year. This is our chance to show that it wasn't a fluke that we were leading that game and we had a good chance to put it away. Like, we deserved to be in that game more so than that final score showed.
Well, you're going to carry that confidence into the game, knowing that you can, make hay against this team. But sometimes what happens in football, that momentum thing, that momentum train, when you're on it, it can't be stopped. And when you're not on it there, I don't care what you do, you can't reverse that thing. And so it was, and we saw it happen this weekend with Buffalo and Baltimore. I mean, there's no reason Baltimore should have lost that game. But with that, when that momentum swings, I don't know what it is. And as a player, you're aware of it, but you can't stop it. And you just want to be on the right side of that momentum. So there's going to be that memory when they enter the game that if we handle our business like we did, in the early part of the game, then we can sort of control the momentum. And if we can keep the momentum on our side, we win. But if we let them have one good play, then that thing can switch in a second.
Let's talk 10,000 foot view here. And one game at a time and all that. I throw all that stuff out the window. I start looking just ahead and all that. When the schedule release came out, which has become this like huge overblown event because we're so thirsty for football, right? That we go crazy for it and the teams release their videos, whole deal. What I do like about the schedule release is I just kind of circle things early and I do games in little pods. And obviously the division games are big, right? But looking at the non-division games, and I want you guys to tell me if I'm crazy here. I looked at Dolphins Broncos in that pod. And they don't play back-to-back, but they play in a 3-game span in October, November, Chargers, Steelers. Those are the four teams and the 4 games that I was like, okay, if the Colts could find a way to go like 3-1 in this group, I'm going to feel really good because I'm looking at from a perspective of, okay, who are the teams in the second crust that the Colts are trying to kind of get to that second crust? Denver, playoff team last year, right? Chargers, a playoff team last year. Steelers and Dolphins, kind of like the Colts, they were right there. I just think, I know it's September and all of that, Jake. I just think that this is kind of like last week, even though Miami might be far worse than I thought they were going to be. I think this is a really big game when it comes to, things like January tiebreakers and all of that stuff. I just don't think that you can, maybe we can overrate them in week 2, but I don't think that they should be ignored, the implications that could potentially factor 3-4 months down the line.
No, I mean, the Colts have been in contention in weeks 16, 17, 18 for the last several years, and there's usually some sort of war earlier in the season in an AFC matchup that comes back to haunt them. So, yeah, I mean, if they start the season 2-0 with 2 AFC wins, like, that's significant, especially since the Broncos will be competing for a wild card spot as well. So, like, this is very, very impactful. Yeah, because like you mentioned, there are some tough stretches. Like, we know they go out to the West Coast 3 different times and Germany. Like, they're going to need to catch as many breaks as they can during that stretch because it doesn't get easy. And then, after Germany, you have your bye, and then you have to go to Arrowhead. So, yeah, these are the ones, like, especially if you could steal a win against Denver, considering they're the favorite. If you can steal this early season win and still kind of make your own destiny as the season goes, like, yeah, this is big because then you have Tennessee next week. You go 3-0 in the AFC to start the year, and one of those wins is against Denver. Like, that's enormous, I think, to start the year.
Yeah, the AFC tiebreakers, a lot of it comes down to just how many games you're winning in your conference. So It's never too early to think of playoffs. You want to win all your AFC games or win as much as you can to add to those tiebreakers. But one thing that always sticks out to me is, Bill Belichick, I remember, said back in the day that that the first month of the season is like extended preseason. Teams are finding themselves. You're figuring out what kind of team you are. And then by October is when you're really catching your groove. But for me, I think you want to steal as many games as possible then in that extended preseason, because by the end of the season, you're not just counting the 12 to 13 games that you played. You're counting the whole schedule, all 17 that you played. So if you just in your finding yourself moment can go 3-1 or 4-0 to start the year, you can survive some of the rough parts of your schedule, especially if those games you're winning early are against AFC opponents. So yes, it's only week 2. These teams have not figured out who exactly they're going to be this year, and they're not, really thinking too much about playoffs at the moment. But every game matters. Every game is important, and you have an AFC game this early in the season against a team you think is going to be in that playoff conversation. You might as well go out there and steal it. Make sure that you are giving yourself that room for those injury games later, for those games to Arrowhead, for those games to Germany where, again, things can happen. Make sure you're giving yourself as much a buffer as possible early in the season while these teams are still figuring themselves out. Get those wins now, and then you can survive some of the tougher parts of the schedule later.
Well, we are fortunate because we don't play that we can look over the schedule and say, I'll circle that one. That would be a good win if we could get it. Or here's one 3 weeks from now where we'd love to steal that one. But as a player, every game is the Super Bowl. Every single opportunity you have, because you're playing against the best competition in the world, week in, week out. And I remember when I played, I guess one bad team that I would maybe consider that other people said were bad was Tampa Bay at the time. But then you looked at their roster, it's like, damn, look at all the studs they got on this team. So every single game is the Super Bowl. Every game is its own entity, and you have to pour 110, 150% into that game, get the result, and then flush it, and then go to the next one. So the players don't have the luxury of looking down. They just have to be focused on the next game, because remember the sequence. Win your first game, win your home games, win your division games, and then win as many of the other ones as you can, just so you get a shot in the playoffs. And all you want to do is make the dance, because anything can happen when you make that dance. But it's a game to game focus. They can't afford to look down the road. They have to take care of business as much as possible in every single game.
And Rambo in the YouTube comment says, didn't the Saints blow out teams in the first 2 weeks last year? How did they make out? And he's exactly right. All I'm arguing is that it's much more it's a bigger deal if you go 4-0 against the Dolphins, Broncos, Chargers, and Steelers than going 4-0 against the NFC West. Like, generally those things have implications by the end of the season. So, yes, every game matters and all of that jazz. And maybe, the Colts are so good that we don't even have to worry about tiebreakers and things like that. But in this town around Christmas, and I know, Jake, you live in this world too, I'm always looking and saying, all right, so if the Colts tie this team here, and then, you know what I mean? And I want to take that off the table. Or if that's on the table, I want to have a more clear vision and put the Colts in the catbird seat to actually break through and make the postseason, which is something that they've only done, of course, twice in the Chris Ballard era. But we're going to keep things moving into our final segment. It's just one game, just one win over the Dolphins. But are you raising your Colts ceiling for the 2025 year? We're going to wrap up the Colts Squad Show with that next. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by Mazda. This is Mazda's Moving the Game Forward, brought to you by those who believe it. It's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. Because these moments do more than win. They push what's possible. They remind us to go that extra yard, shift into that extra gear, and keep moving the game forward. I look back on Sunday's game and Daniel Jones's hookup with Michael Pittman Jr. on that touchdown throw on 2nd and 20. It felt like a knockout blow for the Dolphins. That game was only 10-0 at that point. It was the first play of the second quarter, if I remember right. But the Colts followed quickly with a sack fumble recovery and another score to essentially put the game away at that point at 17-0. And it was only the first game, which is what we keep saying on the show. It's only one game. It's only the first game. But every game matters. And that's what keeps fans and players alike moving forward, always chasing the next great moment. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like that, there's more move to every highlight. There's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Back with you for a final time on the Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for listening, watching, whether you're on the Locked On Colts YouTube network, whether you're listening on your favorite podcast platform. Please, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, leave a really nice comment. It can be about us. It can be about Jake's beard. It could be about Bort. You can do whatever you want to end up leaving comments about. We're all on the Bort train here on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. Again, I feel like I'm doing a bunch of 10,000 view type stuff here, but I think the question remains as the Colts enter another game, and we already kind of talked about Denver and some of the pitfalls that they potentially present. Are you changing your outlook for this season based on one game or seeing proof of concept? Because I think really largely that's what week one was, Alan. It was proof of concept, right? Where Shane Steichen said, especially with Daniel Jones, okay, this is why I chose this guy. This is how this offense is going to be executed. This is what I believe the blueprint is for him moving forward. And for 1 week, the Colts executed that. And I think we already knew going in what Lou Anarumo's defense was: be multiple, throw a bunch of looks at you, keep the opposing quarterback on his heels. And certainly they did that with Tua on Sunday. But does that change your personal outlook for what you thought this Colts team could be?
Oh, I'm definitely raising the ceiling based on the way they played that first game. But I've got the ceiling high because what team in this division, AFC South, impressed you? What team looks unbeatable? None of them in the division. So I think that just based on the way the Colts played, a division championship should be, first and foremost in their heads, on their minds, but actually doable, because if you look at the competition level in the division, and maybe the Texans had a bad day, or the Titans, because they got a new quarterback, they're going to struggle a little bit, or the Jaguars are still going to be the Jaguars. But what team do you look at and really look up to as the star of this division? None of them.
It's fair. It's a totally fair way to look at it. I think for me, I'm close to being there, Derek. I want to be. I want to be optimistic. I want to be excited. I want every single game to feel like it's like a should win for the Colts. There's two things I'm watching though for this first month, and if they continue to impress me, then I will be all in, just like Alan here saying, you know what, let's go get this division. Those two things are the offensive line. If the offensive line looks like this each week, I mean, the playoffs shouldn't be more than just an expectation. They should be a given, because teams that have offensive line play at the caliber the Colts had in week 1, they're in the playoffs every year. This was looking like a Detroit Lions level offensive line from like last season, where they were able to turn their back to the defense and run play action on 40% of their drop back. You can't do that unless your offensive line is playing at a high level. You have to have trust and faith in those young players up front. And they proved it by what they were getting blitzed at a 51% rate in week 1 and only allowed 6 pressures, 1 QB hit, and 1 sack. Like, this offensive line played out of their mind in week 1. And if they can carry it forward against the Denver Broncos, against Tennessee Titans with Jeffrey Simmons, then I'm fully bought in on this team being a playoff team. My other one, though, is I said it a lot this past week with Daniel Jones, is with this offense, 90 to 95% of Daniel Jones' throws are going to be given. They're going to be like layup type throws where you're waiting for guys to clear windows. They're going to be play action where you only have like 2 guys that are really in the target, but there's going to be 4, 5, maybe 6 throws a game where you're back in a true drop back situation, 3rd and 10, 2nd and 15, 1st and 10 after a turnover. Can he make those big throws that get chunk plays for the offense or convert in situations that you shouldn't convert? We're going to call those like low conversion chance opportunities. Can he make those big plays for the Colts? In week 1, he did. He did the big throw to A.D. Mitchell after the turnover, big throw to Alec Pierce after the turnover, the touchdown to Michael Pittman Jr., multiple big plays. He made them in week 1. If that carries forward through the rest of the month, I'm not only buying this Colts team, I'm buying on Daniel Jones. So I can't quite get there yet because we have past data on Daniel Jones that says he's been up and down and he's had good weeks followed by multiple bad weeks. So I just need more data points on him with the Colts, but it's like, I don't need him to be a 75% passer and be this elite player every single week. But if he can just give me those big moments that he delivered in week 1, where the Colts offense is saying, Daniel Jones, we are backed up. We are calling a pass play here. The defense knows you're throwing it. Can you deliver a strike and get us that first down or get us that touchdown or get us a big play? If he can consistently do that this year for the Colts, then I'm with Alan. Like, the division should be the expectation, but I need to see a little bit more of that and the offensive line dominance before I can fully buy into raising that ceiling.
Yeah, they were dang near perfection on Sunday, so it's hard to that's not going to be the case every week. But like the guy said, there are certain areas where you look at and it's like, good, bad teams don't have this and not make it to the playoffs. You know what I mean? So like the coaching I thought was outstanding on both sides of the ball. Like Shane Steichen scripts a hell of a first 15, but I felt like he kept it going. Like a lot of the times after that first 15, they hit a wall and they're awful. I thought he was great like the whole game. Lou Anarumo was awesome the whole time. Like the defense, you could tell they prepared well between what like Xavier Howard had contributed before leading up and then what Lou Anarumo implemented as the game plan, and they executed it. And when you have good game planning and the execution of that game planning, like you're in a good spot. So the coaching was awesome. Well-coached teams usually make it. The quarterbacking, if they just get an adequate level of play, they don't need to get out of Daniel what they just got on Sunday every week. Like he could take a step back and that they could survive with that. We're confident in Jonathan Taylor. I mean, Jonathan Taylor didn't play a lot of the second half. DJ Giddens looked all right. They're going to get Tyler Goodson back pretty soon as well. The offensive line, good offensive lines usually get their teams to the playoffs. And then again, like the defense, you look at each level and like there were positives to take away from each level of it. And Spencer Schrader made all 7 of his kicks. Like again, there
Zach
was
doesn't even want to mention it, but he did.
Right.
Who is that? Who are you talking about?
There was so much good that again, you want to be realistic and say that's not all going to continue throughout the year, but some of it is, and are the most important parts of it going to, because I'm telling you, a well-coached team with a good offensive line, an adequate quarterback play, and a reasonable defense that's well-coached, those get into the playoffs. And to Alan's point, the AFC South has been won because someone has to win it the past several years. You know what I mean? Like, there's
the
been
NFL's default division.
Yeah, there's been no team that's had a stranglehold on it. Like, the Colts haven't won it since whatever it was, like 2014 or 15. since the Colts last won it once, every other team has won it at least twice. Like, there's no Bills or Patriots, or they don't have a team just running things in this division. Like, it usually goes for 2-3 years in a row where one team has a really good run. And look at Houston. Like, they still have not given CJ Stroud the support he needs. Like, that offensive line didn't hold up on Sunday. That was pretty much the bane of their existence last year, but they got into the playoffs because they're in the AFC South. So the Colts have a relatively weak division, and they appear to be pretty strong in some key areas. Like, I have shaved the floor off of what I thought. Like, I initially said they'd be about 7-10 to 10-7. I'll shave the 7-10 off of it. I'll start to raise it a bit to 8, 9, 10 wins. I'm not ready to go to 11, but I will take the 7-10 off the table because they proved to me that they're probably going to beat most crappy teams. So I'm confident on this team. I'm not going to guarantee the playoffs, but I feel a lot better about it now than I did last week.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going, Jake. It's not the fact that, I mean, and this is a cop-out answer, I'm not raising my ceiling as much as I'm raising the floor because we just talked about it. There were stretches last season, the Broncos game is a great example, where the Colts played disaster ball. Like, remember the end of the Titans game, they were up like 34-7, and then it's just boom, disaster ball, and they almost blew that game. The entire game against the Giants was disaster ball. The game against Buffalo, that was a competitive game for the most part, and then bang, disaster ball. Yeah, I don't think that this team is going. Every team has those stretches. Alan, you know them. You know when you're a player, sometimes you just have a quarter or a quarter and a half, 2 quarters where just nothing goes your way. So there will be a stretch of that at some point, but I think they are less prone to what I'm just going to call disaster ball than last year's team. And that's why I think the ceiling is going to be, the floor is going to be raised as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positives to look at with this team. I guess I'm still the Debbie Downer because I'm still, again, maybe it's because you're holding on to those preconceived notions coming to the year. Like, I need the more data points. I will say one thing that did intrigue me a lot, and I think does bode well for going forward, is I think Daniel Jones has a good grasp of this offense. You could tell in week 1, just in terms of changing protections, communicating with the guys. Like, I saw several blocks from offensive linemen where they were feeling things, they were picking up blitzes, they were sliding to the right side, and I'm like, I know that we want to give the credit to the offensive line here, but the quarterback also is what's helping set these guys up. So I think when you have a quarterback back there that the guys believe in, trust, and can communicate with, I think that does lead to a higher floor. And he seemed to have a good grasp of avoiding those negative plays, just in the sense of, even if I could maybe push something more down the field, I can get 5 or 6 yards here, set us up well for 3rd down, set us up well for 2nd down. And I think that's going to raise that floor of the offensive production. So as long as they can stay healthy this year, because that's going to be probably the biggest impact on their wins and losses. It is for every team, but especially with this Colts team where the depth may not be pristine. If they can stay healthy and then those couple things on offense can just continue to click, I can be there right with you guys. I just need a couple more data points first. Give me a good week against the Broncos here. Give me a good week against the Broncos. Prove to me that last year's first half was not a fluke, because they were throwing punches with the Broncos. They had Bo Nix throwing 3 turnovers in that first half against the Broncos last year. And it looked like the Colts were going to be in the driver's seat going to the playoffs, which would have made that Giants loss a lot more painful late in the season. But I think this Colts team has a good chance this weekend. I'm excited for it. And again, I think the biggest thing for me is just keep the offense on pace, keep the ball moving forward, and on defense, take that football away. And they'll have a chance to beat anybody.
I just think to exercise those demons truly, first play of the game, give it to A.D. Mitchell, have him drop back, let him throw, and let's just do it. Like, let's exercise. No, please, if anybody from the Colts organization, please do not do that.
I was going to say, I cannot stress enough how badly I don't want that to happen.
Something I want to throw out there is, Tyler Warren in week 1, 2 fullback snaps. Really good on those 2 snaps. One on the goal line, one to get that first down. I want more fullback snaps from him because I think he can be really good. Jonathan Taylor's fumble at the 1-yard line last year, Drew Ogletree was lined up at fullback. He chipped the linebacker. Taylor broke free. So first play of the game, to not do what Derek's doing here, because that would be crazy, get that fullback thing going. Let's run the exact same play that Jonathan Taylor dropped the ball on the 1 yard line. And then we're going to tape the ball to his hands. We're going to put like the 2-sided tape on it when we hand it to him and make sure it gets over that goal line to start the season.
This is like Alan's 12th show with us. And he's like, what the hell did I sign up for with these guys? They don't know ball at all. Thanks so much for joining us on the Colts Squad Show. We are your place for live game recaps following each and every Colts game this season, but lock us in every Wednesday too, 9 p.m. every single week for the Locked On Colts Squad Show. We'll be back with you Sunday to recap another big AFC matchup against Denver. That's in the late afternoon window, so we'll be getting underway around 8 o'clock or so, probably around 30 minutes after kickoff, right around then. But until then, keep it locked on Jake and Zach every day on Locked On Colts. They had a show today as well. If you missed that already, if you've already listened to that, thanks. Check out our other awesome team and squad shows for more NFL insight on the Locked On platform as well. And be sure to follow us on socials and at Locked On Colts and check out our other great Locked On Colts content on YouTube and TikTok. And we'll see you next time right here on the Squad Show.